I would say if you were left disenfranchised at the end of season 8 of the original Game of Thrones run, and you've been on the fence with watching House of the Dragon, I'm imploring you to start watching it. It really is a true return to form of everything that we grew to know and love about the Game of Thrones. The writing has been on point, the acting has been just stellar. Everything about this just fits right in line with all of it. If you haven't watched Night of the Seven/Nine Kingdoms, please, I implore you to go do that.
Good morning, everybody. Happy 4th of July. Happy birthday to the United States of America. 250 years young. It's going to be a celebration, man. It is going to be a celebration. Welcome into this latest edition of Game Gone Wrong, which is really, we should kind of remove the question mark at the end of that for this season of House of the Dragon because it's irrelevant, you know. But anyway, I am your host, Dave Unger, coming to you here today to talk about Episode 2, Season 3, House of the Dragon. Man, lots to discuss here. I am, of course, joined by my two favorite people in the world to talk Game of Thrones-ish stuff with. First off, the one and only, the commissioner of all things Chairshot related and all things 4th of July related, the one and only PC Tutty. Tutty, how you doing, man, on this 4th of July? Feel like I just saw you a day or so ago.
We see each other all the time. Me, you, DJ, we're all a bunch of American pie sluts. What are you going to do, you know?
We are.
I currently have Nathan's famous hot dog eating championship on my television screen as I'm awaiting the World Cup. I'm going to a car show full of awesome red, white, and blue right down the street. The aunt's having a barbecue. I put up an article this morning on 5 movies you should watch for 4th of July, so check that out over at thechairshot.com.
I got to go check that out. I want to see if I
You know,
mean,
one
if
really
Independence Day isn't on there, then there's something really wrong. Okay, there you go. Yeah. Today is our Independence Day. Anytime you get a chance to just like hear that line, it's a good time. And of course, welcoming back into the show, the shirtless bearded one. I know, man. The sexiest man in all of podcasting, the one and only DJ. Brother, how you doing, man?
Not bad, not bad. Lazy weekend. To be honest with you, I'm not ashamed of that. I've got a long 2-week work stretch coming up, and I'm going to take every advantage I can to relax on this wonderful 250th birthday 3-day weekend.
Yeah, man. It's I do not blame you for taking it easy this weekend. It is a when the 4th comes on like a Friday or Saturday, it's a good time because normally it gets stretched out into a 3-day weekend, that sort of thing. So it is going to be a good time. It should be a wild celebration tonight. I will be driving around with the dogs to spare them from what can best be described for them as an apocalypse. And tonight will probably be an even more apocalyptic event. So yeah, that's what's going on. But we're not here to talk about the pups right now. We're here to talk about House of the Dragon, episode 2 of season 3, Queen's Landing, I think is the title of this episode. And I want to go and get kind of your guys' general overall thoughts before we break this episode down like we typically do. And I'm going to start with the shirtless one this week and get your thoughts right off the bat. Deej, your overall thoughts on this episode, man.
Oh, it was emotionally heavy. Like we talked in private chat about how this episode was at least as good as episode 1, maybe in its own ways better. Yes, but for many, many different reasons.
Yeah, they're talking, I think, the highest rated Game of Thrones episode of the entire 3
Point
series.
4?
Yeah, on
Yeah,
IGN.
9.4. I think Tunney shared that.
That's remarkable. Ooh, and we got the bell now. That is awesome. I feel much better about this. Tony, your overall thoughts on this episode, man?
No, I think I've been the one to watch first on these last 2, and yeah, I just echoing what DJ said. I came away from it like, "Shit, I gotta message these guys. I think this one's better than the last one," and they're not gonna fucking believe it, because we just sat here and waxed poetic last week about how epic that was, and DJ brought up the great point, like, they're epic on different ends of the scale.
Right. And that's my take on it as well, is that this episode is every bit as good as episode 1 in a completely different way. Go ahead.
If Emma Darcy doesn't win for whatever category and award shows she's up for, then there's something wrong.
1000%.
Yeah,
The fix is in.
she was magnificent in this episode. The range of emotions and the things that she goes through in this episode are just stunning. And yeah, anybody who really doubted her acting chops or her range or anything, like you're saying, if she doesn't win something for best performance or anything related to that category in the Emmys or whatever, streamies, whatever you want to call it, then there get Golden Globes or anything, then there's something really wrong, and the fix is absolutely in. But yeah, it's a phenomenal episode in every respect, and we're about to break down some of the high points here for you. I think right off the bat, like you guys are talking about the emotions of this episode, and we start off with, you just get to see the battlefield. You get to see the aftermath of the Battle of the Gullet and Jace's body floating in the water, and then somebody else floats underneath him and that sort of thing. And then Bela on Moondragon is able to get Jace's body, and they bring him home to Rhaenyra. And this is like part 1. Rhaenyra's, I mean, like Emma Darcy's performance in this episode, you can kind of like, there's like 3 different aspects of it that are equally magnificent as far as her performance, but different, similar to the episode. So Jace is brought back to Rhaenyra. She doesn't want to accept it. What have you done? Shaking him, you answer me, and all this stuff. And you can feel the mother's heartbreak in this moment. Bela, she's wrecked as well. And she's the one who tells Rhaenyra, like, yeah, the battle was won, right? I think she's the one who tells them the battle is won, but man, at what cost? And that's the main thing in this opening scene. It's like, yeah, you're victorious. You've won the Battle of the Gullet. The Triarchy has been squelched, and there's multiple moments in this episode where you get to see this, where it's just like, yeah, you won this victory, you won this tremendous battle, but what is the cost of that battle for Rhaenyra? Now, we talked about it last week. She's lost her second son to this war now, and you don't recover it. I know, DJ, there's a really good line that you posted that she says to Damon later on that we'll get into in a moment. But Tunney, let me go to you first on this. The opening scene, the opening 5-10 minutes of this episode are unbelievably powerful because of what's going on with Rhaenyra dealing with the aftermath of the battle, the loss of her son, Bela dealing with her own. I guess she's got some guilt over this whole situation. So let me go to you. Your thoughts on the opening of this episode.
Sad. You kind of see what's coming as they're carrying Jace to the castle to lay him before his mother. And the most interesting thing, and I kind of thought it might go that way, was, the head of the Queen's Guard is like, I failed you, take my life. And she's like,
What
the
difference
fuck,
would that make?
what the
Yeah.
fuck is that gonna do? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
so
And that was, we thought for sure he was dead. And I think at the end, that's she at the end of the episode when she gets her wind back under her, she's like, have him choose.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he is going to die. We just don't see it in the dramatic way that we thought. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, man. Keep
No,
rolling.
that was pretty much it, and her laying over him and just like you said, she couldn't accept it. She wanted, what have you done? She kept asking him. You answer me. What have you done? And boy, just the beginning of the roller coaster emotionally we're about to go on here.
Yeah, exactly. And you see the emotional degradation that Rhaenyra goes through in this scene from the beginning, like you're saying, what have you done, to the ultimate acceptance of the fact that he's gone by the end, where she just completely crumbles in an emotional mess. Deej, your thoughts on this opening segment here?
Couple things. One, again, we go back to her acting. You see her go through most of the stages of grief in like a 60-second period of time. At first, she's talking to him like, okay, what did you do? Obviously very emotional. And she's slowly putting together, that the worst possible scenario has happened here. And then she's laying over him. She's beating on him. Interesting thing about that, I read some behind the scenes stuff. I thought they used a body double for his name just fell Jace. I thought they used a body double. No, the actual actor. That scene took like 10 hours to film. And he's like, I was basically laying there playing dead for 10 hours while she's beating on me and shaking my body and stuff like that. He's like, it was actually, you'd think it would be easy to just lay there. He's like, it was actually quite hard to do that while she's pounding on me and all this other stuff. So just incredibly well just filmed, and again, it just emotionally guts you to the core for her because again, we keep going back to, okay, the battle's won, but what's the cost? And was it worth the cost? And she again, like that quote that I threw out to you guys, she asks that again later on in the episode of Damon.
Yeah, she does, and that's that. I can't imagine having to lay there and like not react to anything going on. When somebody's beating on you, it's like I can't breathe, I can't, have my eyes open, I can't react, and there's going to be bodily reactions and that sort of thing. But it doesn't surprise me that they went for that level of realism there and not just wax figure, body double, crash test dummy, whatever the case might be. But yeah, and I mean, I think also talking about, you at the end of the last episode, we were talking about Corlys and what had happened to him. And watching the episode back and watching some of the recaps, you did get to see like he fell in the water and no one knows what happens. So in the aftermath of the Battle of the Gullet, you've got Alan, who's actively looking for his father. You've got his other son. What's his other son's name? Is it Adam? Is it Alan and Adam? I think I don't remember exactly, but you do get to see what's interesting is that, at the beginning of the episode, you get to see the three dragons who are flying. So it's not Moon Dancer because Bale is already dealing with Jace, but the three the dragon riders that Rhaenyra, Ray or recruited, that sort of thing. So they actually leave Harrenhal. They show up on the scene and they basically go on mop up detail. And if there was any doubt about the balance of the battle, they wipe that out. It's Hugh, it's Ulf, and it's Adam. They wipe out what's left of the Triarchy fleet. And that's kind of where you get to see the scope of the damage that was done and the scope of the devastation. So, Corlys is eventually found. And his reaction to this thing is extremely sobering because he's like, if this is victory, then I don't ever want to see another one. And he tells his kids that, he tells Baela that as well. The Valyrian fleet has been massively damaged. His own Driftmark is aflame. He knows he's not going back there. But it also represents like a pretty big turning point between Corlys and his sons because he's watching Driftmark burning, right? And he basically goes to his sons and says, I have nothing left to offer you except my name. And Alan is like, that's worth more to me than anything you could have given me. So go ahead, Tony.
Adam. Alan has the dreads who rides the dragon.
I think, isn't Alan the one who's bald?
Alan's
and Adam's
the bald one.
Alan's the bald one, and Adam's the one
bald
riding.
one's Adam's the one with the dreads.
Right. Yeah, I think Tony can look it up, but I think that's, I mean, it's the two sons are Alan and Adam, but to get
right.
back, it's all right, buddy. I'm here for you, man. But, he offers him the Valyrian name, which is a big moment because, the whole idea that, we talk about in the Game of Thrones universe and the concept of bastards and bastard sons. And of course, the greatest bastard of all time is Jon Snow. And now you've got these two other bastards who are here, but now they're brought into the fold, and Corlys, who's gone through his whole life has been about legacy, right? And leaving a legacy for something. And now he's got his two sons there. He's given them their name. Driftmark is done. Basically, everything Corlys tried to build up materially, like Driftmark and all that stuff, has been wiped out. All he's got left is his name. But man, that really resonates with these guys significantly. So, Tony, I'll go to you first on your thoughts on this thing.
What's funny is you come up with a list of the top 10 bastards in Game of Thrones universe. There's so many.
Good point. Yeah. Top 10 bastards.
I reposted on social media a picture of the four actors on the island, just like enjoying their time together. And it was such a beautiful picture and such a juxtaposition to the actual scenes that they're in and the drama and sadness. But to see them all come together is like your tiny glimpse of hope in this episode, I think,
Yeah, there's not there's not a lot of hope to be found in this episode, but in that scene where they're on that beach and they've rescued Corlys and they're surveying the damage to their legacy, really, is what they're looking at. Is they're looking at their legacy as a flame and all that sort of stuff. But like you're saying, they find a little glimmer of hope in the fact that, hey, they're all together, that sort of thing. At least you've got that going on. But Deej, your thoughts on Corlys's, basically his reconciliation of what has transpired as he sits on this beach with his kids.
Yeah, I'm just gonna kind of piggyback off what Tony was saying because that's pretty much hitting the nail on the head. It's the one little bright spot in this otherwise dark, emotionally dark episode. Like it's this little just and Game of Thrones is notorious for this, which leaves me worried that some shit's about to go down here because there's no way in the Game of Thrones universe we just have this neat and clean little reconciliation and everybody's good and everybody walks away, hugs and kisses. So I'm almost worried for what we're going to get moving forward, but it added a little bit of levity to what is a really dark episode.
It really is, and let's transition a little bit from that point to another complicated aspect of things. And one of these situations we talked about in the last episode that the best intentions sometimes go awry. We get the whole scene with Rhaena and Sheep Stealer, where she shows up, and I forget who the gal is who she's talking to, but she's like you have to look it up as to who it is, but she's like, I don't want you here. I don't want the dragon here. And she's like, I thought I could control it. I fucked up. And this gal's like, get off my land and that sort of thing. And Raina's like, do you want to drag it or not? And, the gal that she's talking to, and I forget her name, I have to look it up, but she's like, I can't really control where a dragon goes, but I don't ever want to see you again. So Raina's in this situation where, what she wanted so badly in that first season was to have that dragon, right? To have that power, to have the dragon fire. When she got that power, it kind of backfired on her. So now she's at the point where, and she's crushed because she learns about Jace's death from this gal that she's talking to. And I know Tony's trying to find her name for me, and when Raina learns of it, you can just see her crumble even more, right? Like just the guilt and the in that moment that she realizes that she's primarily responsible for Jace's death. And, she's just like, she's crushed by this whole thing. But, at the end of this thing, this gal relents. She basically says, I don't want to see you again, but I can't control where the dragon goes, which really means do what you want because I can't stop you. But it's a big moment from the standpoint of Rhaena still wrestling with the consequences of her talked about last week, the hubris of youth and all that sort of thing, and just overconfidence, and I could be the hero and charge into battle, and the devastating consequences of that decision. So, Deej, I want to go to you on this one. Rhaena, Sheep Stealer, that gets kind of complicated pretty
It
quick.
does, and I think this is gonna have like I talked about last episode, this is gonna have ramifications down the line, I think, because I don't think it's gonna end well for this young lady. I still think Rhaenyra is gonna take it out on her, which is going to obviously strain her relationship with Corlys. We'll see. Like I said, I have not read the books, so I really am going into all of this blind, so I'm just fantasy booking here, but just based on what I've watched and what I've seen, this has further ramifications for that alliance.
Tony's got an answer.
I love when computers and AI and Google just try to do too much. Like literally do exactly what the fuck I told you to do. Okay, thanks. I better know. It was Lady Jane Eyre in the Vale.
Yes, that's right. Lady
Okay.
Jane Eyre. That's right.
That's an interesting scene, man. I think the young lady does wonderful at just being trepidatious and scared and unaware of what's going to happen, knowing that in her mind she's got nowhere else to go. In her mind, if she goes back to Dragonstone, she's fucked. And in all reality, that's probably where she just should have went and explained what happened. You brought a dragon back, right? I think Rhaenyra is going to be willing to listen, although I think she finds out that they know that there's the wild dragon out there. I think she ends up
Right.
talking to Damon about it, but I
Or
don't think they
Baela.
know that's who has it. Yeah.
I think Baela tells her that there was another dragon introduced, and Rhaenyra's like, there couldn't be. Where would the Greens have gotten another dragon from? And she's like, I don't know, but there was a rider on it. Now, but Baela doesn't know it's Rhaena. Doesn't know it's her sister. Nobody knows what it is. Rhaena has to deal with, like you're saying, Tony. She's terrified as to where to go, and like you're saying, maybe she should have gone to Dragonstone. In hindsight, maybe it's better that she didn't, because when she finds out Jace is dead, her reaction to that is just like, oh my God, what have I done? but Rhaenyra wasn't going to kill anybody in that moment. She was.
I think Rhaenyra overall is going to end up, if she came down to it, the only person to blame for Jace's death, Jace. All he had to do was listen to his mother.
She's Targaryen crazy, though. She's not gonna see it that way, Tony.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, had they all gone in together, what would have been smart is Jay says, "Come on, Mom, let's go take these pricks out together. Me, you, Moon Dancer, let's go." Probably that battle goes a little bit better for them, without the tragedy. But I understand Jace's position. I got to protect my mom. That's part of it. Part of it is I want to be the hero. I'm young, I'm virile, I'm on top of the world. I want to be the hero, and he ends up being dead, unalived, whatever you want to call it. So, but yeah, I think you're right. The Rhaena development and her bond with Sheepstealer and how that whole thing evolves with whatever goes on in the Vale. We have not seen the last of that. Obviously, we haven't seen the last of a lot of things as this episode progresses. Damon it's interesting. Like he's partying with the boys out there, outside of Harrenhal, right? And they're all planning their next move. And it's, they've got the head of the one guy, the one Lannister, I think is on the spike, right? Tony, I think that's who the twins, and there's a head of a dragon on a spike, or lion, excuse me.
That's Jason Lannister, I believe.
Right. Yeah. The Lannister. And they've got all that stuff going on. And then, they bring him the scroll where he gets the news that Jace is dead. And the news, it changes the mood immediately. It goes from a festive celebration to reality has now set in. And Damon's like, "You guys go here. I've got to go back to Dragonstone." And it's really interesting. You also get that scene with Damon and Alice, the witch, who becomes a much bigger part of this story as we move along here. And Alice is basically asking for Damon to, she wants Damon to give her Harrenhal in exchange for delivering all these rivermen to Rhaenyra's army. And it kind of suggests that what Alice wants might not be on anybody's side. She might be in this for herself. Damon kind of shines her on and doesn't really give her what she wants, which really pisses her off. And Alice is like, "Don't come back here," which, as you see where Alice ends up at the end of this episode, is like, Damon, you might have fucked up there a little bit. But in this moment, Damon goes back to Harrenhal. The rest of the army goes in a different, or Damon goes back to Dragonstone. The rest of the army goes in a different direction. But yeah, I thought that was really well done in that part of the episode where they're sitting there and everybody's joyous and it's festive. And then as soon as he gets that news about Jace, the mood completely flips and changes and it gets very serious again. So, Tony, let me go to you first. Talk about Damon, Harrenhal, Alice, all this stuff going on, and then where we end up.
I enjoyed the drinking scene, like the lighthearted part of they're out there and they're singing their songs and stuff and they're having a feast and the wine shows up. "Hey, wine!" They got Norm and her cheers, "Norm, wine!" But yeah, the acting there of Damon when you can see the
Matt Smith
right down his face.
Matt Smith kills it as well, man.
He's so good.
Crown Prince has died. And then it's right back to business. All of them. His two leads, the leader of the Stark, whatever we're calling them, I'm not sure yet, the Wolf Army, and then his younger, lieutenant there get back to business. So yeah, it's interesting that you follow that progression, like sad, hope, fleeting joy back into sadness.
It's a good point. Yeah, it hits you in waves of emotion. It's ebbs and crests and valleys and all.
You ever watch Hot Ones?
Yeah.
Where they eat the wings? Well, the wings don't go progressively from mildest to hottest. They go in order so that by the end, you're really fucked up. And this episode does that to you.
Yeah, it really does.
Good analogy.
That is a really good analogy, Tony. This is why you get the big bucks.
We'll see you next week for House of the Dragon, Season 3, Episode 3. Have a good one.
Thanks, Tony.
Tony's off the day drink.
Yeah. He's already been day drinking. Deej, your thoughts on this scene outside of Harrenhal and everything that we talked about, which I think is really on point, and especially Matt Smith's excellent performance here.
Yeah, he's killer. I've got a quick thought and then a question for you guys based on one that I saw on X the other day. Yeah, it opens up. It's very Ren Fair. They're drinking, they're eating, they're making merry. It's like, hey, this is great. And you're like,
the Renaissance Festival.
It's very much a Ren Fair.
You know about Renaissance festivals, DJ?
A lot about them. Yeah, until they shut ours down here, bastards. Anyway, the question I wanted to pose to you, this is something I saw, and it's mainly a suggestion. The witch, Alice, is there any chance that she's the same witch from Game of Thrones? Because remember, that woman's 300 to 400 years old, which means her character could exist during this time period.
You mean like
That is one of the
what
going fan theories.
Melisandre? Is
Yeah.
that that's an interesting thought. She
It's a
could
theory
be.
that I saw, and I wanted to pose. I've been waiting for a couple days to pose that to you guys.
She had to cast some sort of spell to go from brunette to massive redhead, but,
But she's
it's
essentially a shapeshifter anyway.
that's true. That is very true. That is interesting. I also like the one that Tunney showed us that he's like, "I can't get this out of my head," that Aemond ends up being the Night King. You know,
I threw
that's
that out there.
Oh,
He's
you threw it
not.
out there?
No,
He's
Okay.
not. That's actually can be debunked. Go ahead, Deej.
yeah, no, but that's what I love about this Game of Thrones universe and its fandom are just these wild. Some of them are wild and crazy theories, and then some of them are kind of plausible. And I
Yeah.
love that the community is. I'm glad as much as wrestling pisses me off. The discourse about wrestling pisses me off. I find myself much more engaged in the Game of Thrones fandom these days because while some people hate certain things, but the growing theories and just the discussions that we're having has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought, though, that she ends up being Melisandre, because it's pretty evident that Alice is going to play a much bigger role in things as we move forward, especially as far as Aemon is concerned. And if you did you guys tell me you guys actually stuck around and watched the behind the scenes and all that sort of
I
stuff this
didn't.
week? God damn it, Teach. I keep
She's
telling you,
not.
man.
They're not the same person. They're from different places.
We think so.
Well, I'm reading it.
I got you. Grok is telling you what the real story is.
But-
That's fine.
Google, whatever, it doesn't matter. One's from
Yeah.
Westeros, the other one's from Us High. And then where's
Yeah.
the necklace?
The who?
Where's the necklace that's keeping her young? Because she's like 400.
Maybe she gets it in this one, but I don't know.
Maybe
We'll
she
see.
is young here and she acquires the necklace down the road.
Yeah.
400 in Game of Thrones. She'd be 200 years. She'd need a necklace.
Okay.
Yeah. Meanwhile, as all this stuff is going on, as we've been talking about, Aegon and Larys are on the run. And Aegon, who's always been a pretty big pussy throughout the first season of House of the Dragon, starts finding his legs under him in this episode, right? He kills a dude, shanks a dude, breaks off an arrow. Larys is all like, and Aegon's just going off on Larys, like, because Larys is trying to convince him, hey, I saved your life and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, great. Now we're going to get delivered to Rhaenyra and her, what does he call him? Billy Butcher would be proud. He calls him something about cunts, that sort of thing. But Aegon is the one who makes the decision to go to Rook's Rest in a different direction than what Larys is thinking. But, Aegon is still ruined. I love the stuff. It's like, you don't seem to be in as much pain. I'm still in fucking pain, and it's like, well, you're not asking me for milk of the poppy. That's because I'm not talking to you, that sort of, I love that stuff. And he's still the king at this point in time. So he still thinks that there's going to be things that Cole will be loyal to him once they get to Rook's Rest and that sort of thing. So you can see the plan for Aegon is to get there, to marshal his forces, and then do something about that. The problem with this is that King's Landing is now completely exposed. Aegon's not there. Aemond is on his way because they actually the army sees Vhagar flying overhead. So he realizes, okay, Kristen Cole is like, okay, this is on like Donkey Kong right now. But Aegon is weak here in this scene. He's still recovering. But I don't know, Deej, I'll go to you first. It sure seems like Aegon is becoming more relevant and finding his lane at this point in time, right?
Yeah, one of the things we talked about last episode is really how ineffectual as a king that he was and why Aemond was probably a better choice overall. But one thing I will say about Aegon is he's defiant. Like
Yes.
he's ineffectual as a leader, but he's just got this defiant personality, which I think is where he's finding strength from right now is in that defiance.
It's interesting. It's like when we talk about pro wrestling, make an analogy. We talk about some people do better chasing the title than defending it.
Yes.
And Aegon seems like he's much better as a chaser to get back to the throne that he never should have had in the first place than he ever was to sit on the throne and say, yeah, I can rule on high, that sort of thing. Tony, what do you think of Aegon at this point in time? Larys is just Larys is Littlefinger. I mean, that's pretty evident. But what do you think of Aegon at this point?
Does he not really have the respect of the people who still support the Greens? Not only is he completely like maligned and zero respect from the Targaryen side, his own family doesn't even want him to be king, though. His mother, his brothers, nobody's with him. He is all by himself. His wife doesn't even like him. And by the way, if you go back and look at some of the comparisons to the drawings in the book and the descriptions in the book that his wife, what's Helena, right?
Helena.
The job she's doing. If you just kind of capture the way that she is portraying her emotions through her visuals, is another epic thing that's happening in this season.
Yeah, yeah, and you raise a really good point. Helena's she is innocence personified, right? I mean, even through this whole episode where Allison is trying to use her as the pawn to get to where she wants to go, which is where I want to transition into this, which is Allison trying so hard to honor her deal. But like you're talking about Aegon, that nobody likes him. His mother was going to offer his head up on a silver platter to Rhaenyra in order to reach a peaceful resolution. But meanwhile, in this episode, because we got to turn to Allison because she is the puppet master in this whole thing. She's pulling all the strings. She nearly gets raped, and that ends up very badly for the Master of Laws, who just decides, like, I don't know what the fuck you're thinking, dude. Like, you're going to try and rape the queen in her own chambers with everybody right outside. How'd you think that was going to go for you? So this was a little weak storytelling, but I get it, that sort of thing. But that whole thing notwithstanding, Alicent is, she knows she can't control Aemond. When Aemond leaves King's Landing, when he finally takes his mother's advice and goes on his way to Harrenhal, boy, that opens the door because now the big obstacle that she was facing is gone because she can't control Aemond. Once he's gone, then her plan goes into effect. And she uses Helena to the maximum effectiveness, Tony, right? She says, this is what we have to do. You need to go along with this whole thing. They go and Helena's response is, I'd still like to keep some chickens, which typifies just how innocent she is in this whole thing, right? She's not a ruler. She doesn't want any aspect. Go ahead, Tony. I know you're laughing.
No, I mean, amidst all of it, like you said, even before she says that, when Allison comes to her and needs her to go with her to tell, the city guard to not fire the dragon harpoons, she's in the garden reading a book, playing with a caterpillar, like totally oblivious to everything that's going on,
Yeah,
right?
she's looking at the caterpillar like this isn't the right season for them.
And, is Allison using her to help her? Yes, but Allison has always looked out for her, and one of the only people that's truly, really looked out for her. So I don't necessarily know that it's not a symbiotic relationship as well. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, go ahead, Deej. Jump on there.
I was just saying, that's very much, and I think Tony really landed on something there. She's using her, but she's also protecting her because if this gets violent, the hierarchy is going first, and unfortunately, by marriage, she's part of the hierarchy. So she's like, yes, I'm using you, but yes, I'm also saving your ass. And the scene where they go and they're talking to the Master at Arms or whoever he was about not firing the harpoon, and the girl's like, yeah, basically, you're going to listen to me because I'm the queen.
Well, she
So
says,
innocent and so
yeah, like
yeah.
she says in that scene, she goes, I will have no beast harmed, and that sort of thing. And that's how she gets the army to stand down from the harpoons and that sort of thing. But to Tony's point, I think like Allison is using Helena because, Allison has got some stroke, but Helena she's really the queen because she's the king's wife. So you need that element of her basically rubber stamping everything Allison is doing to get people to listen. And like you guys are saying, and that is the critical scene in this whole plan for Allison is to get the guys on the towers with the harpoons who can do damage and kill the dragons to stand down. Because once that's done, you've got no defense because these dragons are going to come in. They're going to land on the towers, and there's a lot of symbolism here, like the same stuff like Daenerys landing on the towers at the end of Game of Thrones and looking over the landscape and deciding to pull the trigger. Where here you've got three of them who could do a lot of damage, but they're like, nah, we're just going to let this happen. But it's a critically important scene. Allison is doing everything she can. And like to your point, Tony, again, because you're so brilliant, and this is why I love covering this show with you. But now, like you're saying, she's protecting Helena at every turn, even though she may be using her to serve. When it becomes clear that they cannot escape the city, what does Allison do? She figures out the best course of action is to present ourselves to Rhaenyra in a cataclysmic conclusion to this episode.
Was that the best decision though?
I don't, that's a good question, Deej. And I mean, I get why she did it because it's like there is no other option. Because like you're saying, you guys are saying the hierarchy is going to be targeted right now. Once the people realize that this is all falling apart, who are they going to target? Oh, we got two queens here. This is going to be great. Let's behead both of these guys. So I agree with you, Deej. Was it the right decision? I don't know. Was it the only decision? Quite possibly at that point in time, you know? We get the whole aspect of, I think we got to talk about Aemond, and that sort of thing, because this is a big part of the episode as well. Aemond goes to Harrenhal, right? And he goes in there and he takes Harrenhal by force. And in the post episode where they look at the behind the scenes stuff and they talk about the episode, the juxtaposition of how Damon approached Harrenhal, where he storms into the main place, and I forget who's the guy's name. Sir Simon Strong, is that the old guy who ends up getting killed by Aemon in this episode? Is that Tony?
For the Lord of Harrenhal, I'm not sure. Him and his
I
two
think
sons.
I think it's Simon Strong. Maybe you can look that up and just see what it.
He
But
eliminated a whole family here.
he did, and here's the thing. So when Damon comes to Harrenhal, and the two scenes are identical, the same sort of scene. Damon bursts into the main hall. They're all sitting around eating, and Damon decides, "I'm going to sit down and eat with you." And he gets the loyalty of the house and that sort of thing. And it goes on from there, where Damon kind of peacefully takes over Harrenhal, and he's got to deal with all the visions of everything going on and Alice and all that stuff. Aemon comes in there. Go ahead, Tony. No. So Aemon goes in there. He bursts into the main hall, the main room there. Unlike Damon, he basically tells these guys, "Draw your sword." And the one guy, the old guy who he ends up killing, who I'm still hoping Tony's figured out his name, and if I got it completely fucking wrong, what's his name, Tony?
Oh, and I'll jump in. It's searching for something else right now. I can't stop
Okay,
it.
okay. So this guy, the old guy, comes out and he says, I haven't raised a sword in years. And Aemon's like, "Well, get one," because Aemon just wants to fight and he wants to kill. And he's in that bloodlust, that battle mode. When he arrives at Harrenhal, Vhagar wipes out everything that is left standing there. Any sort of resistance is incinerated. He takes down a lot of the castle, all that sort of stuff. And then they show up, and this one guy's like, I don't have a sword. I don't want to fight you. You know, and Aemon looks like he's actually like thinking about what he's saying, just to knife him in the gut. He slashes his other son with the sword, but he lets his guard down, and all this stuff that's going on and all of his bloodlust. He lets his guard down. The last surviving son is able to come and knife him in the back. Aemon kills him too, but then he reaches behind him and he realizes he's bleeding, and bleeding pretty badly. And he's starting to bleed out, and he starts to collapse, and the blood loss, he's crawling towards Alice, who's there as well. And one of the things that they said in the behind the scenes that is a foreshadowing something bigger happening, the relationship between Aemon and Alice. Alice is obviously going to nurse him back to health. I think that's pretty evident. What are the ramifications of that moving forward? Are they, Aemon, he's trying to get it on with his mom in the last episode, but now you've got Alice here. It raises some interesting things. But Deej, I'll go to you first on this whole scene at Harrenhal, where Aemon's approach to this is so different from Damon's. And it ends up with some pretty disastrous consequences for this family. Like Tony says, they get wiped out completely. Damon ends up getting himself in a pretty bad position by the end of this. But Alice, again, like we said earlier in this discussion, she becomes a much more focal and central figure to what is happening here in House of the Dragon season 3.
Yeah, she's quickly becoming one of those people that's moving chess pieces around on the board. It's going to be interesting to see where her story arc goes from there. Yeah, Aemon's just a hothead. He really is a hothead, and we'll see what happens here. But yeah, wiping out the entire family and pretty much the entire castle was pretty wild. Like we talked the last episode, I think it was Tunney was saying, probably every episode we're going to get some big battle-ish scene, and I think this was your big battle scene. The dragon pretty much laying waste to the castle and setting, torching half the guards and everything like that. I think this was your one big battle scene for this episode.
Right. And I think that's smart. You weren't going to be able to match anything you did in episode
Right.
one
And
with
you
the Battle of
shouldn't
the
try
Gullet.
to.
No. Have a little, give Vhagar his flowers, that sort of thing. And I think it's important to show the difference between Aemon's approach and Damon's approach, because they are dichotomies of each other in a lot of ways in this series. And you get to see how one's approach leads to one result and the other's approach leads to another one. Tunney, go ahead, man. Your thoughts on Aemon's taking of Harrenhal. But again, the theme of this episode, yes, victory, but at what cost?
Sir Simon Strong.
Hey, look at that. I remembered something.
Ring the bell.
Barry Harwood. Yeah, ring the bell for me, Tunney, please.
Here we go. It's interesting you brought up the fact that Aemon is kind of lacking any direction besides, power, with blinders on. Alice is going to make him more dangerous. She's going to give him purpose and strategy and intuition that he's not been lent to be able to account for from other people that are trying to help him out, right? He's going to know. And the interesting part about it is you brought it up at the beginning of the episode. Damon didn't even have to tell the truth. He could have just placated her and she would have killed him and it would all be, that would be it. House of Dragon would have been over. It would have been season 3, episode 2. We're done.
That's right. That's right. But because of what Damon does, Alice, as Aemond is laying there pretty much dying at her feet, she's weighing her options, and that you could see it in her, see the wheels turning as she's looking at him, thinking, what can I do with this guy? And it makes me wonder, like you're saying, is Aemond going to go through this whole process that Damon went through, the visions, facing his mortality, facing the consequences of his past, and God knows there's many of those. Will Aemond, excuse me, come out of that whole ordeal reborn like Damon was? That's probably not good for the Blacks if Aemond comes out with a whole new purpose and perspective on this thing. I mean, am I right? What do you guys think about that?
I think obviously there's a collision coming between Aemon and Damon, and my understanding is that is in the book. At this point in the story, Damon mops the floor with that kid just because he is smarter, he is more in control of everything, of himself. This kid's wild, untamed, untrained. I think he's a trained swordsman, but his emotions are not trained. And I think that's the journey he's about to go on. It's like, look, you have this untapped ferocity about you. We need to hone it in. We need to focus it. Because right now he has no focus. His focus is just hack slash and, whatever happens, happens. So if we're going to that final battle between the two of them, he needs to be a better overall threat.
It's funny because after watching this episode, I don't know immediately, but either that later that day or the next day, I asked Grok to give me the top 20 warrior/knight/fighters in all of the Game of Thrones universe. They rank Damon 5th. They rank Aemon 13th. So there you go.
Wow. That's an interesting power dragon or power ranking power dragon. The dragons are powerful too, but anyway, man, let's get to, I tell you what, because we could linger on this, but let's get to the crux of this episode and what really is important, and that is Rhaenyra taking the Iron Throne finally. And it all starts with, Rhaenyra is crushed by the death of Jace. She hasn't come out of her whole place. What's the name of the gal who's like her Massaria, yeah. And I think that's an interesting exchange between Damon and Massaria outside where, you kind of get to see in the behind the scenes, they're bonding over dragons and that sort of thing in the first season. But here at this point, it's clear Damon doesn't trust Massaria. Massaria doesn't trust Damon. Massaria even makes a comment to Rhaenyra where she's about to leave for King's Landing. Remember which one of us has been honest with you. And Rhaenyra she's really not having it at this point because she's so singularly focused on the job. But it is Damon who brings Rhaenyra out of this despondency that she's in by telling her, hey, I've seen the Song of Fire and Ice. I've seen the vision. I've seen, and I think in that where he goes through all those visions, he actually sees Daenerys as the mother of the dragons at one point, but he sees Rhaenyra at the end sitting on the throne with the crown on. And he's like, if I told you that was all true, what would you think then? And that kind of brings her out of her grief and her stupor. And she makes a decision in that moment, I'm going to King's Landing. Her advisors try and talk her out of it. And Rhaenyra's like, fuck off. I'm done talking about, go ahead, Tony.
Well, somebody relays the news to her while she's in bed that gets her moving that Vhagar has left King's Landing.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's a big moment for her because she's in that moment. She realizes Alicent is trying to honor her deal at this point. She's gotten rid of Aemon. She's gotten rid of Vhagar. It is time to go on the attack. That combined with what Damon says is really what motivates her to get going. But I do like her advisors try and counsel her, and she's like, "Go and fuck yourself. I'm done with all this discussion. I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago." And she goes to King's Landing. And we already talked about Alicent is able to convince the guard to stand down and allow the dragons to land. They go into the Red Keep and that sort of thing, and they start. And I love like the scene where they're just kind of walking through the hallway and get a little bit of spattering of resistance that Damon quickly wipes out. And they're just like, the look in their eyes as they move towards the Red Keep is just, I think they even like hold hands for like a microsecond or that sort of thing. And they keep moving on. And you get to the keep where the door opens and the Iron Throne is there. And that's the symbol of everything that's wrong with Game of Thrones and everything that's right at the same time, sitting right there in front of them. They go in there, and then I think it's the folks who were up on the roof who stood down from the dragons coming in who oppose Damon, and you think, oh, this isn't going to end very well, and they start to square off, and then the city watch comes in behind. And in that moment, you're like, man, they are fucked because it's two of them against 50 of them. And then you realize that the city watch is actually loyal to Damon. And they basically say, throw your swords down or die like traitors. They throw their swords down. And then, that's the end of this whole thing. And Damon's got there and he's all like, basically to Rhaenyra, go and take the throne. The queen ascendeth, that sort of thing. But she's like, not yet. Bring Aegon the usurper to me. And then you find out that Aegon has fled and that sort of thing. And then they start looking for people that they can put in his place. Before we get to the real climax of this thing, your guys' thoughts, Tony, I'll go to you first on this whole thing. Your thoughts on this whole progression as to how we go from Rhaenyra being grief-stricken to leaving Dragonstone to going to King's Landing to just basically walking into where the Iron Throne is. And she's this close to accomplishing her goal, but she stops and says, bring that son of a bitch to me.
I think the biggest part of it is, you started to touch on it, is Luther Largent, commander of the city watch, right? And after you realize that they're on the Targaryen side, as he announces, I am loyal to the one true queen of the seven kingdoms, Rhaenyra Targaryen, Jaime turns around and they greet each other, and it's good to see you, old friend. And he goes, I would never forget you gave me this gold cloak 20 years ago. And that paid off now, didn't it? So it's just an epic moment right there. I think they bring out the guy that was going to rape Alicent, right?
The Master of Laws, yeah.
And I'll hold off on what you were going to get to next and let DJ go.
Yeah, if Tunney were ranking bad decisions this episode, trying to rape the queen is probably the highest on the list of bad decision making in this episode because it does not go well for this guy. Yeah, this whole scene was amazing, and I love the slow progression through the city. And then we finally get in and just everything. And then we get into the throne room and she doesn't just walk right up there and take it. Like there's a series of events that need to happen before we get to that. And the build up to it has just been incredible.
Yeah. Like you're saying, the buildup was awesome. And like you're saying, bad decisions that are made, really, really, really poor moments of judgment. But like Deej, like you're saying, I mean, in that moment where she just kind of like, it's right there in front of her, everything that she's been looking for. And she stops and she pauses and she says, this is what I want to do. Meanwhile, they go down into like the catacombs or the dungeons and that sort of thing. And like, there's a guy saying that Lord Larys to Daemon left you something in case you ever return, which is interesting because like, well, Larys is on the run with Aegon. Why would he have thought about this ahead of time and left, who we discover is Otto Hightower is, and I love when Daemon brings him into the Red Keep, he's like, the rats in the dungeons have gotten exceptionally large at this point in time. They bring Otto in there, and it's Otto and the Master of Laws who are presented in front of Rhaenyra for judgment, that sort of thing. And Otto in this moment is, he's still trying to play the game, but I think he kind of knows the game is up. Because he's trying to like say, if your father could see what this has come to, and it's like, Dick, you put all this into motion with your fucking bullshit. So this is your reckoning right now. This is all on you. But I think like he asked Daemon to be the one to execute him because he doesn't want to be hacked to pieces because he knows Rhaenyra hasn't done this before. But Daemon is awesome in the scene because he's imploring Rhaenyra, if you're going to be the queen, they have to see that you won't waver. You have to be the one to do this. And ultimately she decides that she is going to be the one to do it. And her first hack at Otto isn't so good. It lands with a thud and it doesn't do the job. But then she gets her second win and she beheads him. The Master of Laws tries to say something about his wife before Daemon just says nope and cuts his head off. And one of the great scenes, it's some of the best cinematography, and they talked about it in the behind the scenes. And I watched this a second time. There's so much where Rhaenyra actually goes to take the Iron Throne in that moment that is fucking awesome. She steps through Otto's blood, right? So you can see as she walks along, it's Otto's blood on her footprint. Then as she actually rises to take the throne, you get to see it reflected in Otto's beheading and his blood. So it's not like you don't see her actually going. You see it in the reflection of his blood, which like the guy in the thing is like chef's kiss. And I'm like, abso-fucking-lutely, man. That was unbelievable cinematography. Rhaenyra takes the Iron Throne right as Alicent and Helaena come in. Alicent sees her father, who's been beheaded. Don't know what's going through her mind there. But Rhaenyra at first is like almost horrified at what has happened as Alicent is there. But then right before the episode ends, you see her, the look on her face and the demeanor change. And she's like, this is what it had to be, you know? So she's perfectly comfortable with it at the end of this whole thing. But man, what a fucking closing sequence. You couldn't get more dramatic or cinematic or, you know, anything like that. It's simply unbelievable scene. Deej, I'll go to you first on this, man. The closing moments of this episode are unreal.
Yeah, Otto realizing and being correct that she's going to hack him. She hits him like in the shoulder blade area. The biggest thing that I want to say about this closing segment is that if you didn't tell me this was episode 2, this is how good, how climactic, and just how well done it was all around. If you didn't tell me this was episode 2, I would have thought it was a season finale. That's
Yeah.
how good the last minute and a half of this episode was.
This could have been the end of a season. How amazing
Yes.
it was. You could have chopped it up differently and like ended here with Allison and Rhaenyra looking at each other like, oh fuck.
Rhaenyra's poise change, like Dave was just saying a minute ago, from horrified of everything to she lifts her chin, she adjusts her posture, and she looks Allison dead in the eye. God, amazing work.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's extremely important in that moment that you see her transition into the queen. You know, that this is the queen of the Iron Throne, and that she's like, this is the price of what you promised me. You know, your son is not here, Aegon is not here. Somebody had to die, and I mean, Rhaenyra had to take some satisfaction, as nervous as she was to strike that blow. At the same time, after everything that Otto had done to her, there had to be a level of satisfaction and that whole thing. And you know, it wasn't like Allison and her dad were on great terms at the end of this whole thing. She was pretty fed up with him as well, but still, that's your father who's been beheaded. I'm sure there will be ramifications of that to come. And yeah, I mean, you guys talk about this could be the season finale. I mean, this is episode 2. Rhaenyra takes the throne. You're like, where do we go from here? Well, you've got Jason Lannister out there with the army, who's still, is it Tylan Lannister?
Lannister, we think, if survived the Battle of the Gullet with it being thrown overboard, the twin who's Jason's dead. And then you have Aemond Hightower and the Hightower army, which is maybe one of the greatest armies in Westeros right now. And the youngest Aerion Targaryen, I believe, is the one who's laying the claim for the Hightowers.
Okay.
I believe.
Right. And so you've got this element of things going on where, yeah, you're on the throne and you've got the dragons, but there's a big ass army that is apparently going to lay, you know, they've got a claim to the throne as well. And they're not going to go away without a fight. Now, they don't have the dragons with them, but you still got Aemond and you got Vhagar out there. You've got other dragons who are loyal to the green. So there's still there's a lot of moving parts and elements. And you're like thinking, like, good God, this is episode 2. Like you guys.
Daeron. I want to get that right. Daeron Targaryen is who's with Aemond, Alicent's youngest son, who now lays the claim because Aegon is gone and Aemond as well.
Right. Man, but yeah, where do you guys think we go from this thing? I mean, we're 2 of the most epic episodes. Like, Tony, you made the comment in the chat talking about how this has all the potential of being one of the most epic seasons of television ever. You know, we're 2 episodes in and they're 2 of the greatest episodes that you've ever seen. So it's like, yeah, man, where do we go from that? I mean, where do we go from here, man?
The Hightower army, I would imagine, right? That's the only thing standing between them, right, DJ? I can't think of anything else. They've conquered the sea. They've taken King's Landing. It would have to be Ormond and the Hightower army meeting up with Aemond at Harrenhal with the help of Alice and you know, coming up with some kind of plot. I mean, I don't know what else they could do to juxtapose the position they've become in.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we're probably due for a slowdown episode. I think the next episode or so may be more military strategizing than actually action and just this emotional roller coaster that we've been on for the last 2 episodes. That's where I think we're going to go. I think we're going to start off on this high. We're kind of going to dip. Now, mind you, this is a high, so the dip is not going to be, you know, this valley. But yeah, I think we're due a bit of an emotional break before we slow climb back up into the finale of the season.
Ray is asking me a question. He's saying that, you know, he goes, I know it's hot out here, but man, it's so hot. You got DJ with his shirt off podcasting. I'm like, well, it's his gimmick. I said it's his gimmick for GGW. And Ray goes, Girls Gone Wild. I'm like, no, but
damn,
you know, I know.
Even I didn't make that connection.
Tony, what is this thing you're sending? You sent us something in our text about Bran, the 3-eyed raven, doing some like retconning, some intervention in the timeline. Is he Loki now? Is that what we got going on?
So it's a pretty interesting thing. Bran empowered as a 3-eyed raven, has been actively controlling, skin-changing into or guiding multiple historical figures throughout Westerosi history. He doesn't just observe, he intervenes in it, much like he did with Hodor, or when Ned Stark heard him at the Tower of Joy. The past isn't fully fixed, but evidence suggests otherwise that loops influence in without paradox. The Mad King hearing whispers and to burn everything, like systematically over a course of 2.5, 3 centuries, scheming the demise post facto.
That'd be,
And we put that motherfucker on the throne at the end of it all?
That's right. At the end of it all, that'd be the ultimate fuck you to everybody who shit on the end of the series, right?
He did all of this so that he could ascend himself to the throne and get rid of all this fighting. Yeah, it's an interesting theory.
That is some 4D chess right there, that, man.
That
Everybody
is.
goes back and looks at the end of Game of Thrones differently. It's like, oh my God, it was all a ploy to get
That's
him.
very
to where-
Watchmen, though, because you got to fuck everything up to make everything right. That's a very Watchmen finish.
So
It
think
really
about
is.
if they come out with another series that's the post Game of Thrones series, right? It's what we all want.
West of Westeros.
That and maybe North of the Wall at the same time. They kind of do both, right? And then 5-10 years later, hey, guess what we're going to give you? We're going to give you all the moments in one season. Maybe they pick 12 moments, and it's one season, 12 episodes of every time Bran constructed the history of events to lead to where he's at.
And they thread all the needles.
They said, here are all the breadcrumbs we left you guys that you didn't catch.
That'd be
here
crazy.
You go. Or, I mean, it doesn't even have to be Bran, just a three-eyed raven in general, right? I mean, it could just be the whole concept of, the three-eyed raven, how it's intervened in all this stuff. Maybe Aemond is the Night King. I mean,
Children of the Earth created the Night King like thousands of years ago before any of these people were around.
Children of the Earth, those really weird-looking beetles, man. Is that what we're talking about? You're talking about a different Children of the Earth. I got you. Okay. Look up Child of the Earth as beetles, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's like, ew.
Not sure I want to do that.
You probably have some in your backyard, Deej. I think they're indigenous to Florida, probably. I don't know, maybe. But yeah, man, what an amazing episode. I think
Children of the Forest. Sorry, Children of the Forest.
All right, Tony. Got you. I got you.
I get it right.
Yeah, I mean, we got at least, what is this, an 8-episode run this season, right? So we've got at least 6 episodes left. And where we end up, how do you get to better climactic moment by the end of episode 8 than we just got here at the end of episode 2? I don't know, but I'm here for the ride. This has been an unbelievable season through 2 episodes, and it's only going to get better. Well, I don't know, man. The bar is set awfully, awfully high. Before we cut out of here, man, Deej, final thoughts on this episode and things in general.
I would say if you were left disenfranchised at the end of season 8 of the original Game of Thrones run, and you've been on the fence with watching House of the Dragon, I'm imploring you to start watching it. It really is a true return to form of everything that we grew to know and love about the Game of Thrones series. The writing has been on point. The acting has been just stellar. Everything about this just fits right in line with all of it. If you haven't watched Night of the 7/9 Kingdoms, please, I implore you to go do that. I think the Game of Thrones universe, minus that little misstep that everybody seems to have with it, is as strong as it ever was. And, I'm glad to see that because I want more of it.
I love what you said there. This series and this season in particular, for the 2 episodes, is a reminder to everybody. This is how good we can be when it's done right, when the story is tight, when it's written well, when it's acted well. They are sparing no expense. The Battle of the Gullet was every bit any battle that we've ever seen in any, long night, whatever you want to match up against it. Battle of the Gullet had everything that you could watch. And then this episode had so much emotional aftermath. What they kind of tried to cram in at the end of season 8 of Game of Thrones, where maybe they were trying to do too much at once. This series seems to be trying to take in their time, and hopefully they keep that through season 4. Tony, your final thoughts on this episode and where we're at in House of the Dragon, right?
Amazing. It's been great. It's been a great 2 weeks. It's been a great 2.5-ish hours of cinema on my television, right? I can only watch the show when it's dark. It has to be dark to watch this show because it's just epic and awesome. And I'm interested to see one of the big things I'm interested to see over the next couple episodes is how much better of a aerial fleet Rhaenyra can come up with to bring the dragon riders together. They're not a well
They're not
synergistic.
cohesive.
No, they're not a very synergistic unit at all. It's basically Rhaenyra and everybody else is afraid of her and they don't know what to do anytime anything doesn't go exactly the way it should. I mean, look at the gentleman who were supposed to wait at Harrenhal and left. Look at the young lady who went to the Vale because she's scared, right? Like, it's going to be another interesting part of it.
Yeah, like you're saying, Damon really bitches down the dragon riders and says, "I didn't notice that any of your instructions required you to think." Just like basically saying, none of this requires independent thought on your part. Just do what you're fucking told. But they've got dragons too. So, that might get very interesting. But a great episode. Absolutely. This was fantastic stuff. Before we cut out of here on this 4th of July, Tony, let me go to you first. Where can people check you out on social media and all that kind of stuff you got going on, man?
Follow me at PC Tunney. Go to thechairshot.com. Go to prowrestlingtees.com/thechairshot. Chairshot Radio Network. All your favorite streaming platforms. It's weekends are all DJs, so there's a mindless wrestling podcast out there covering the epic Sami Zayn title victory, and then tomorrow more health and fitness journey. DJ's been doing a great job. 30 mindless minutes. I know a lot of people are enjoying that as well, so make sure you're checking that out, and all the work that's been done over at thechairshot.com. Make sure you're checking that out as well.
Deej, I think maybe you should change the name of your show to the Shirtless Podcast, at the rate you're going.
But wild with DJ.
Yeah.
Girls Gone Wild with DJ.
You can find me. I do post some fitness and workout updates on my account on the app formerly known as Twitter. You can find me at the Mindless Pod. Again, like Tony said, myself, Rob, and Jason doing the Mindless Wrestling Podcast. 30 mindless minutes. Very proud. I want everybody to go listen to the episode because I have a good chat with a guy named Big Jim from the 3 Count Thursday podcast. We had a wonderful discussion, him being very open and honest about his health, and I'm very proud of that episode.
That's a good show.
In akin to your latest follower, are you now medium Papa Pump?
We haven't established that yet. I'm probably, when you stack me up next to him, I'm definitely little Papa Pump.
Yeah, congratulations on getting Scott Steiner to
that was pretty wild. I saw that. I'm like, I popped for it.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's like when we got followed by John Cena before we realized, he follows everybody. But that's okay. Still, John Cena. As far as me and what I got going on, the best way to interact with me right now is to just go to the website, attitudeofaggression.com. That is the best way to interact with me. All the episodes are there. You can also interact with me on the YouTube channel, which we just hit 50 subscribers, which I know for a lot of you out there doesn't sound like a lot, but for me, it's like, wow, that's only took several months to get there. But if you go to the YouTube channel, hit subscribe, like, turn on notifications, all that fun stuff. We would greatly appreciate it. The plan is for this week on July 8th to do the Roswell episode of Unidentified History, which I'm going through the research on that. And there's a lot of stuff there. That's all I got to say. This might be my most ambitious and probably foolhardy project I've done yet, Tony. Just trying to throw this thing together. It's a lot. It's a lot, but I believe in me too. And I got a few days to put it all together, but I'm learning a lot about this event. But that is the plan to do our Roswell episode on the 79th anniversary of Roswell, unless Trump does something crazy and actually does do disclosure, like has been rumored for months. I wouldn't count on it. Don't bet your poly market on that. But until next week, that's going to do it for this episode of Game Gone Wrong. Everybody have a glorious 4th of July. Be safe out there. Don't blow your fingers off. The pretty fireworks are not where you can't do the Macho Man fingers if you don't have any. Yeah. So, anyway, I'm going to quit right there. You guys, fellas, have a great 4th of July. Everybody have a great 4th of July. We'll catch you next week for episode 3 of House of the Dragon and see where we go from here. Take care.